Greetings, unsettled souls. 'Tis Sam I be the Gangi. Then political commentary for the media speaks. Guys, I'll tell you what, the Fukushima has been put off for a minute, but in case you can't, in case you wondered where I went, for those of you that even noticed that, was he even gone? Kidding. For those of you that wondered where I went, I had not a wisdom tooth, a molar removed. I broke it eating a piece of pizza, and I've been out of commission for a minute. And then yesterday, of course, I was lucky enough to go to this, and I'll be covering that for Blasting News, by the way. And I'm going to let some people trickle in because I see that they are now. Welcome aboard. This is the massive Fukushima update. And while people are still coming in here, let me remind everyone that 7 years ago, you want to know what 7 years is in terms of nuclear radiation? It's this. Okay, that was 7 years. That little break, that was 7 years. And what that means is that there are a lot of people who are trying to convince others that it's somehow safe to go to the area or into the region. And of course they say, look how much time has passed. And, people say, oh yeah, that's been a considerable length of time. Things are probably okay now. Well, let me tell you what, if you don't believe me, go ahead and look this up. It's rather easy to do. The half-life of many of these toxins, like plutonium and uranium, are millions, in some cases billions of years. Yes, I said billion with a B. Therefore, it is not very likely that, unless they come up with some amazing longevity drugs, that it's ever going to be okay to dwell in that area again. Ever. 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 But there are a lot of people who refuse to acknowledge that. They refuse to see that. And a lot of that's going to come up today in the massive Fukushima update, which we are going to get in now. I hope you have hit share. I hope you have hit subscribe. All right, friends, check this out. 7 years after Fukushima disaster, the ghost town remains. 7 years, massive Fukushima earthquake claimed 18,000 lives and triggered a Fukushima nuclear disaster. Of course, we all know that. 18,500 people were left dead or missing, and communities have been destroyed. On Sunday, residents along the coast gathered outdoors to remember the tragedy as sirens wailed at 2:46 p.m., the moment that the magnitude 9.0 offshore earthquake set off the tsunami struck on March 11, 2011. The tsunami overwhelmed seawalls and washed over buildings. It killed neighborhoods, buildings, cattle, farms, pretty much everything in its path got it. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said in an official ceremony in Tokyo that reconstruction is making steady progress, but more than 70,000 people are still displaced, and many have no prospect of returning to their homes. Prince Akishino, the second son of Japanese Emperor Akihito, expressed hope that the tsunami would raise awareness and help prevent magnitude damage in the future of such disasters. Now, friends, that could be the most important takeaway from this, and I'll tell you why. Preventing these kinds of things in the future is far more constructive than trying to imagine that we can somehow build things or create things that will prevent this kind of nuclear disaster from happening, because quite frankly, we can't. And those who say that we can are either ill-educated on the topic or they are interested in the bottom line, which we're going to get to here very, very quickly. It is my earnest hope that we hand down the knowledge to future generations in order to protect many people from the dangers of disasters, he said. Cleaning up the still radioactive Fukushima nuclear power plant remains a daunting challenge and is expected to take 30 to 40 years. There's a nuance there that a lot of people don't know, and that's why you tune into this show, I'm sure. We don't have the technology to clean this up. It'll take 30 to 40 years, they're saying, to clean it up, but we don't have the technology to do it. They're just assuming that we will be able to develop it within that time frame. And then, of course, once it's developed and it takes time to implement it, then they're saying 30 to 40 years. It doesn't make any sense. We can't even get close to it. As a matter of fact, we can't even find robots. We can't make robots, I should say, that can get near it. They fry within seconds. Some might make it 2 hours. They send back a few grainy pictures, and the pictures are scattered with all these little dots, which of course is where radiation is showing up on the actual video footage of what that is. The government commissioned a group of experts. They concluded last Wednesday that a costly underground ice wall is only partially effective in reducing the ever-growing amount of contaminated water, and of course it's leaking into the oceans. They put this ice wall they have. It is basically just something that was used when companies built subways. They'll make ice walls and things so that the construction can continue at certain times. It was never meant to be used to stop a nuclear disaster. It was never meant to be used as something that would be effective enough to keep nuclear toxins from going into the ocean. And TEPCO, which of course is GE, and I tell you on every single show, come on listeners, say it with me, never invest in TEPCO or General Electric, because this is what they bring to your life. The ice walls helped reduce the radioactivity water by about half, but the plant also pumps out several times as much groundwater before it reaches the reactors via conventional drainage systems, which of course is why their food is toxic and everything in the area is toxic. The groundwater mixes with radioactive water leaking from the damaged reactors, and the contaminated water results from rainwater that comes into contact with the soil and structures in the plant, of course, which suffered the meltdowns. Now, they kind of gloss over that. I want to give that a little bit of time here so that you guys can understand exactly what they're saying. First of all, the water that's being leaked into there isn't just coming from the leaking containers, of course, that have the washout water in it. It's getting it from the rain, for one way. The rain is washing over the power plant. Now, the power plant, of course, this is my wall. The power plant is practically glowing with radioactivity. So when the rain just, drips down the side of the building and gets into the ground, it's creating a huge problem. And as this gets into the groundwater gets into, come on, drum roll, you, when you drink it. Yes, you, when you eat the fish. You, when you drink Japanese sake. And you on the West Coast, Oregon, you should not live in Oregon, California, Washington, none of those coasts. And I know you say, oh, Sam, you can't, that's foolishness. Why don't I just log off? This long-haired idiot's telling me that we shouldn't live in California. You're damn straight I'm telling you that you shouldn't live in California. And I don't pull off from that a bit. There are many people getting cancers and illnesses that are attributed to people that live horrible lifestyles, and they don't. And the reason it's happening in such large numbers is the radioactivity from Fukushima. The panel agreed that the ice wall does help, but said it doesn't completely solve the problem. Yeah, and it won't. They can't even get tritium out of water. Panel members suggested that additional measures must be taken to minimize the inflow of rainwater and groundwater. Yeah, like an anti-rain dance. Literally, they have no idea what they're doing here, friends. None. And this is from Japan Times. Organizers canceled Bangkok event to promote Fukushima fish after groups voiced safety concerns. Now, one of the things that made me start the entire Correct Views show that you guys are now watching, and thank you for doing so, was that idiot Lady Gaga. When she went to Japan in 2011 and ate some of the food to show people how healthy it was. That might have been a nice publicity stunt for her. Maybe, she lucked out and didn't ingest anything horrible. But there's people there that are going to eat this every single day now based on the fact that this famous pop singer told them it was okay. Well, they're trying to feed that food to you. and to your family. Obama's not even, when he was in office, wasn't even testing the groundwater, wasn't testing the food properly, was raising the limits that were allowed for poison foods. And you guys know that I support Mr. Trump, but damn it, he's wrong on this issue too. He hasn't done anything to test the radioactivity. I'm not saying Clinton would have, but you get my point. A Thai event to promote fish, and neither would Gary Johnson. A Thai event to promote fish from Fukushima Prefecture was canceled after locals and citizens groups raised safety concerns, despite the fact no radioactivity material was found in the fish. That is entirely untrue. Let me tell you the way they do that. What they do is this. They take a certain segment, a certain small segment, and they say to you, there's no radioactivity there. For instance, in this room where I'm using at the library are microfilm machines. Now, if you look at my picture in this screen, you would say that room has no microfilm in it. I tested it. I watched the video. There isn't any. Of course, you can see them all over when the computer is moved. But no. There's none here because you don't see it right where it's at. That's what they're doing. They're testing for a certain number of radionuclides that they are well aware is not going to show up. Then they're telling you that the radionuclides are not in it. So, again, it's like in this room. There's only what you see in this room. There's no carpet. There's no windows. No, it's just what you see. If you believe that, then it may be Darwinism leading you to eat it and it's survival of the fittest. You have to be a moron. Yes, I said it. The event was hosted by local trading companies to promote flounder caught in the waters off Fukushima and was scheduled to be held at several Japanese restaurants in Bangkok between March 10th and the 31st. The hosts, however, decided to call it off after consumers and environmental groups voiced their concerns, many through social media, saying it's not safe to eat Fukushima fish. Well, guess what, Einstein? It isn't. The cancellation of the event in Thailand, the first country to resume imports of Fukushima fish, showing how much they care about their people, it underscores the difficulty of brushing off the radiation stigma. All right, let me put that into context here. Brushing off the radioactive stigma would be like somebody stabbing you, and as you bleed to death, someone telling you that you need to blow off the stabbing stigma as you bleed out, die. That's the analogy you need to keep in your head when you hear these stupid things. Of course they're toxic. Since 2015, no marine products caught in the waters of Fukushima have been found to contain cesium beyond 100 becquerels per kilogram. Cesium. Okay, cesium. That does not mean americium, tritium. That does not mean uranium, plutonium. It doesn't mean strontium, which is damn near a free pass to bone cancer. It doesn't mean cesium wasn't found. So you're fine. You won't get thyroid cancer. Your bone cancer. Your heart valves will mess up. You'll be sick all the time. But hey, there's no cesium, so it's safe. Why don't you have some? That's like saying you've got arsenic and rat poison sitting here, and you've got some, Tide Pods for you millennials. Just because everything else wasn't used, go ahead and have that Tide Pod. It's fine. It won't hurt a thing. Yeah. Around 130 kilograms of Fukushima fish have been shipped to Thailand since March 1st, according to the prefecture. Well, they're in a hurry here, ain't there? It's only the 16th. They're trying to get those in while the money's good. They care about the bottom line, not anyone's health. Fuku initially hoped to ship 1 ton of the marine products to Thailand by the end of March, but that has been halted. Yeah, by people that don't want cancer. Imagine that. We will continue our efforts to confirm the safety of Fukushima produce and to work on exporting marine produce. What you're going to work on promoting and producing is cancer. Moving on, friends, this is from Forbes. I do have a couple more I want to get to here. There are 2 left. Emergency managers are well prepared if a Fukushima-like nuclear incident happens in the U.S. Now, there are many ways that this could be wrong, but I can use a couple of analogies that will help you understand it rather quickly. Anybody remember the Titanic? It was unsinkable, remember? Guaranteed nothing could happen. Doesn't that sound an awful lot like what we're hearing now? Let me take it one step further for you, for those of you that would like to know. Why don't we look at it in light of what could really happen in the U.S.? It could be a tidal wave hitting one of the coasts, because we're always smart enough to put nuclear power plants on coasts. Near one of my favorite places in the whole world, Cedar Point, the Perry nuclear power plant sits like a blight right on Lake Erie. But if there's ever a substantial earthquake, let's say in a state that doesn't have any oceans at all, it has been proven that the placement of certain dams and water warehouses could be triggered by an earthquake, which would create a wave big enough to create a Fukushima. So for those of you listening in states where you have nuclear power plants and no ocean, you may want to think about this. Beyond even that, we know that the earthquake, not the tidal wave, pretend there was no tidal wave, the earthquake caused one of the meltdowns at Fukushima prior to when the tidal wave ever came washing in. So there are two reasons right there, maybe even 2.5 reasons, why this following article is full of crap. In late January, in the wee hours, Californians received a tsunami watch triggered by a 7.9 earthquake in the Gulf of Alaska. That type of warning is underscored all along the Pacific coastline, and especially Southern California, given its location, of course, of power plants and spent fuel pools and the ring of fire. To remind Tokyo Electric Power's Fukushima plant crumbled in March 11th. We know this. But the Southern California generally, the structure is in place to deal not just with the incident at Edison's International Sanofi Nuclear Generating Station, or SONS, some song, but also with respect to all types of emergencies. Wildfires, flash floods, earthquakes, to name a few. So they put this in with other incidences that they might be able to control to make it sound like nuclear power is one of them. The organizational structure collapses to facilitate decision making. Power is then shifted to a centralized disaster response team given the authority to carry out the mission. As such, war rooms form and meetings begin with key personnel. Together, the group decides whether resources will be deployed, and if so, where and to what extent. Let me tell you what this group does. What this group is going to do is they're going to be meeting when a major earthquake hits, and they're going to be talking about how amazingly wrong they were, and they're going to be asking how they can cover this up for the good of the bottom line. That's what they're going to do. The earthquake, it doesn't matter. People like to talk about the fact that there was no power at Fukushima, and that is, of course, one of the primary reasons that it melted down, but it's bigger than that, friends. It's way bigger than that. The earthquake alone could expose fuel rods, fuel pools, and release radioactivity in clouds in bursts that would last for billions of years. They do not have a plan for this. They are absolutely full of it, friends. We organize in the same way. Someone is focused on planning, logistics, financing, and mapping, and those units are all activated, said Holly Crawford, director of the Office of Emergency Services in San Diego County. There is an incident command system that creates an organization to promote efficiencies and chains of command. Okay, well, if the plant is earthquake hits, rods exposed, there is no sense in planning, logistics, financing, or mapping because the disaster has already been done, and you do not have a plan for that. And you can see it in this article because they don't even address the issue. I guarantee if I can think of it, they thought of it, but they're not admitting that. The problem with the entire nuclear industry, my friends. To be clear, it's the job of the Office of Emergency Services to be prepared in the event of a worst-case scenario, which I just laid out, and they didn't. To have a consequence management. And that office does not have oversight to the nuclear power plant. Rather, it is part of a broader team that comes together during crisis training. Yeah, crisis training, all right. It says, with regard to songs, the emergency contingencies have changed because the plant is no longer running. But they have, of course, it's spent fuel pools that are the danger, which are just as radioactive and poisonous now as they were when it was running, and will be 200 years after I'm dead. Now, of course, the spent fuel pool is transformed from wet storage, where the rods that house it is getting cooled, into dry storage, where they will be put into concrete encased steel casks and buried underground. Now, again, we've covered this on the show as well. Earthquakes can also jeopardize those, as can erosion systems, which they have usually not taken any account for. We have in place all the response Take two. We have in place all of the response mechanisms for when the plant was operational, the bill says. We always verify independently that the plant is telling us. We need to do that before we can make a decision. If there was an incident because of movement of the rest of the fuel pool, we would respond accordingly by sending out teams monitoring the area for radiation. Yeah, but the trouble is they're never honest with anybody about it. Okay, that's the huge problem here. They're almost never honest about their findings. Instead, they just start jimmying the numbers around and hope that you're dumb enough to fall for it. Nuclear power plants move forward. This is horrible. Dry storage has had no release of radiation that has endangered the public or the environment. It is the responsibility of the NRC to license which dry cask storage will be approved. According to it, the cask must be able to resist earthquakes, projectiles, tornadoes, and temperature extremes. All right, now here's the problem with saying it's going to protect against earthquakes. Let me get to that real quick here for you. The problem is that they do what's called risk management, risk assessment, where they say, all right, there's probably not going to be an earthquake big enough to affect this, because there usually isn't. Then when one comes along, they simply say that it was bigger than expected, but don't worry because it won't happen again, because they almost never do. And it goes on and on and on, and people keep falling for it again and again and again. Friends, that brings us to the DUMBDEE of the day. Oh, where's our DUMBDEE music? We got to get it louder than that. All right, here we go. You are an idiot. As the DUMBDEE music plays beautifully for us, friends, let me remind you that this is listener supported. That means that you can donate to the show from the correct views at hotmail.com. You can do so through PayPal. And I do show receipts. Look at my last Dunce Cap show. I do show receipts for any time that anybody donates anything. And speaking of the Dunce Cap, everything has been put back due to this tooth out. So the Dunce Cap of the Month award show will be taking place, there'll be 2 of them at the beginning of April. And I'll be covering Marches in that way. And with a double dose of dunces, it'll be fun. We've done it before. I don't like to, but it happens. All right, guys, here's the DUMBDEE of the day. Is Fukushima doomed to become a dumping ground for toxic waste? Despite promises of revitalization, which we've already talked about being a bad idea, from Japan's government, 7 years on from the nuclear disaster, the area is still desolate. Now, here's the idea that they've come up with, and to the inexperienced, it probably sounds brilliant. Since no one can live there, some of you are saying, hey, Sam, you just said we can't grow food there. We can't live there. Okay, why don't we take all of the nuclear waste and put it there, since people aren't going to be there anyway? Makes sense, right? No, because another earthquake or a tidal wave is going to have even more toxins to wash over the world with when it happens. Therefore, it is very clear to see why I just gave it the DUMBDEE of the day. Listen to these dunderheads. I swear to God, these are the stupidest people that ever lived. This month, 7 years after Fuku's disaster, reactor meltdowns and explosions, blah, 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 we know what it did. It says no government official wants to admit this, but people cannot live there, is what he's saying. A secure repository for nuclear waste has remained a long elusive goal in the Arlegio. But given that Japan possesses approximately, I said that weird for my tooth, but given that Japan possesses approximately 17,000 tons of spent fuel from nuclear power stations, such a development is vital. Most spent fuel rods are still stored precariously above ground in pools in the highly earthquake-prone nation. Now, for those of you that don't know what fuel rods are, don't go tuning out. That's what they're known as fuel. When the rods can't be used anymore because of having gone through the nuclear process, they are so radioactive that if you were to sit by one for 5 minutes, you'd probably be dead. They don't know what to do with these. They're sitting in water, oftentimes 2 or 3 stories in the air. So, of course, any earthquake or any mishap can send the poisons everywhere. And they're looking for places to put the stuff instead of not building nuclear power plants, of course, which is what an intelligent society would do. Japanese officialdom relentlessly emphasizes positive messages regarding Fukushima's short and medium-term future, prioritizing economic development and a gradual return to skeptical evacuees. Look, see what that means? What did it just say? That priority. What are your priorities? Your family, your marriage. You know, most people don't care about their marriage, but you can hope. Your family, your marriage, your kids, right? Something like that? No. The priority is not the health of any. They don't care about you. Go away. The priority is getting people to move back in there to get that money coming, not your health. That's why they're lying to you about all of it. To get it remediated, the return rate for the least hard-hit communities is only about 15%. The Fukushima prefecture government is currently promoting a plan dubbed the Innovation Coast that would transform the unwelcoming region into a thriving sweep of high-tech innovation. Much of the development would be directed towards robot-related industrial cluster and experimental zones for robot testing. Now, the robot testing there, it makes a lot of sense because they're going to need it to decommission this plant, but that's not all that they're doing. The test would develop robots tailored for disaster response and for other purposes, of a course stimulating a wide range of hurdles and challenges already well represented in Fukushima itself. Large water tanks would contain an array of underwater hazards to navigate, mirroring the wreckage-strewn waters beneath the Fukushima Daiichi plant, where a number of meltdowns remediating underwater robots have a premature demise within recent years. Yeah, they can't get near it. They absolutely cannot get near it. But they're already admitting, as you can see right here, follow my cursor, for other purposes. So they know it's going to happen again. They know that the plants are going to melt down, and you have to keep building them. Let's keep putting them up. We got robots for it. You know, millions of people will be infected and get this horrible radiation inside of them, but that's fine. We got robots, right? You can clean it up afterwards. You'll have cancer, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. That's the way they feel. Elsewhere on the robot test field, dilapidated buildings and other ruins would serve as a proving ground for land-based response robots, which must navigate twisted steel rods, broken concrete, and rubble. Again, they have no idea how to make these robots. They're just hoping for it. Proud long-term residents of Fukushima, from their part, see all development as a continued colonization in the home prefecture by Tokyo. Years of colossal decontamination measures have scraped irradiated material from seemingly every forest, park, farm, roadside, and school round. That doesn't do any good, of course, because the rain just brings it right back, as we pointed out earlier in the show. So they lie to you about that as well. They scrub the tree down and tell you that the tree in your backyard is no longer radioactive, but it is this very next time that it rains, or the next time that the roots pull up any water inside of it. The state promised to remove all of the contaminated soil from Fukushima after 30 years, and government officials have been scrupulous in insisting that this will be the case for soil. Yet in a nation that has 17,000 tons of highly radioactive spent fuel rods and no willing candidates to secure repositories, it is only a matter of time before it becomes possible for politicians to publicly back the idea of transforming the area around Fukushima into just such a repository. And what did we just explain that would do, friends? It would open it up a million times worse. So let's say another earthquake hits, God forbid, or a tidal wave hits that area. We all know that Japan was created by what? Anyone? Bueller earthquakes. The next time one hits, instead of it jeopardizing a number of people with what's already there, they want to bring in nuclear waste from all over the place and put it there, so the earthquake can hit it. Doesn't that just sound genius? No, it sounds like the DUMBDEE of the day, and that's exactly why I gave it that. Friends, thank you for listening. Please donate at the correct views at hotmail.com. You can donate through PayPal. Please, I'd like to get a better camera. And I'll be back. I'll be back next week with the Dunce Caps. Or not Dunce Caps, I'm doing it next month. I'll be back next week with more shows, I should say. Thank you, friends. Good night. God bless. And share this video. hit subscribe and let other people know the facts that you learned from me today. I appreciate it.